Uh, Welcome to this HLF 2018. Our next panel discussion here is on rural India in a flux, a conversation between Himanshu Singh and Rammanohar Reddy. May I invite both the speakers onto the dais, please? He was editor, Economic and Political Weekly from 2004 to 16, associate editor for The Hindu between 1993 and 2004, and assistant editor for Deccan Herald between 1988 and 1993. He has a PhD in economics from JNU through the Center for Development Studies, Thiruvananthapuram, an MPhil from the same institute, and a postgraduate diploma in management from IIM Calcutta. He is the author of Demonetization and Black Money, published in 2017, and co-editor with M.V. Ramana of Prisoners of the Nuclear Dream, 2004. I request you to begin the conversation, sir.
Introducing. Yeah, it would be nice of
you. Our other speaker for today, Himanshu Singh, is the founder of Rise of Literati and a bibliophile. He is a lead data scientist as well as the founder of the online magazine Black Feathers.
Himanshu had a side that I didn't know of. But anyway, let me introduce Himanshu. Himanshu is formally, he is at the JNU, at the faculty of the Center for Regional Development.
Economic Studies.
Oh, sorry. He was at the Center for Regional Development. Now at the Center for Economic Studies and Planning. You may know of him more as a columnist. He has a regular column in the Mint and has been writing for quite a few years on rural issues. He has written very widely on poverty, rural affairs, and many aspects of the rural economy. He's also very active politically, and he has a number of articles and papers both in professional journals and in the general media. And I must tell you that, some years ago when I was in the Hindu, many years, more than a decade ago, and I asked him for an article and he wrote an article and he sent it and he said, Himanshu, but what's your surname, So he said, no, I don't, carry a surname. I said, sure, no, we need it, otherwise it'll be like Dharmender or Jitender, That's before I realized the importance of, dropping one's caste or community surname. Unfortunately, I haven't followed his lead and I haven't done so as yet. But anyway, let's start off. The topic of the conversation today is on the rural India in a flux. By flux, I would say there is stagnation, but there is also a change in the rural economy. And what are its broad contours? And if you could talk about that. To begin with, we are in a situation where recently in the Gujarat elections, there was a clear rural-urban divide, and there was a palpable rural anger towards the regime, born out of rural conditions. Okay, and earlier last year we saw protests in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and it seems to be that there is a lot of anger in rural India about two things. One, about agriculture itself, and about a loss of, the absence of jobs, for rural youth. And some surveys also say that the next generation of the farming community, about 80 to 90% of them don't want to continue on farming. We assume that those surveys are correct. Now, what does it say? Are we at some kind of a crisis point like in the early 60s? That was a production crisis point. There was not enough food that was being grown. So a lot of experiments were done, a lot of new technology was brought in. Is it similar or is it something else? If you could, we could begin with by talking about this aspect.
Thanks, Ram, for that introduction. The last time I used the word crisis was 2 years ago when I wrote a column, and the title had the word crisis, agrarian crisis in that sense. And the next day I got a mail from Ram asking, are you serious about using the word crisis? And normally we don't use the word crisis in a common language. It requires, probably we can call it as a stress or some kind of a problem. But crisis means really a serious kind of a problem in the rural economy. 2 years ago I used it, and probably I was not in a position to defend it. But today I can say that there is actually a crisis that we are talking about. And that crisis is something that is not restricted to one crop, one category of farmers, or one state, one area, one locality. But this is something which has now become widespread. You have mentioned some states. The last count I had, there were at least 13 to 14 states, major states, where farmers were on street protesting. And this is now north, south, everywhere that you're talking about. And this is something now more or less accepted. Two things before I kind of say what we exactly mean by the crisis in that sense is, and I want to clarify in that sense, is when we say crisis in the rural economy, we are not talking only about agriculture in the sense, the crop production agriculture in the sense. We are talking about the agrarian system, which is more or less including everybody, including the non-agricultural workers. We are generally talking about the rural economy, and that includes a large number of people who are dependent on agriculture directly, indirectly, but also in the rural setting in that sense. And if you look at that, then that crisis is now something that cannot be avoided. And I'll come back to that. But this point that Ram had started with is that if you want to understand what we mean by the churning that is going on in the rural areas, that is where the churning is something which is leading to change in the production system, the way we are dealing with the markets, the way the farmers are dealing with the society, the state is dealing with the farming, with the agriculture. And all of these are bound to create a kind of a change, structural change in the way agriculture is organized or the rural economy is organized. The problem is not with the change. Problem is the inability of the government to understand what the change is all about. And that change has gone from being a change only in the production system to now being a crisis of joblessness that we are talking about. In fact, the example that I give is that the agitation, the Patel agitation, the Maratha agitation, or the Jat agitation that we are talking about, that's really the symbol of the agrarian crisis. And you look at the three communities, and these three communities are the best agricultural communities that you can think of. They are the ones who shouldered the green revolution. I mean, the Jats in the northwest area, Haryana, Punjab, and western UP, the Marathas here, or the Patels in Gujarat. The three richest states in the country, the three richest in the states in the country in the top 5 are these three. And we are talking about the three communities who are among the richest communities that you can think of. The three most urbanized states are these. The only other exception which is there is Tamil Nadu. So if you do a ranking of the big states by the level of industrialization and level of urbanization, you'll find these 4 states. So you have these ones, and that is where so in the richest state, most urbanized state, most industrialized state, the richest community is the one who is on the street asking for government jobs and reservation which don't exist. And that everybody knows, that there is no government job that exists. And that is where we have to look at it. Why is it that this community is now on the street demanding for government jobs? These three communities, all of them, had a saying in their own local language. I can't reproduce in that sense, but basically it meant that no son of a Patel or Jat or a Maratha would ever work as a government servant or a worker. That is below the dignity. So they were so proud of their agricultural identity, and today they are all fighting, burning buses and killing people just for the fact that they want a government job. So we can't actually look at this issue only as prices falling, or sometimes there is a drought or something which is happening at one particular year or one particular season or one particular month. This has become now a big one, and this has been allowed to reach a situation like this simply because the governments for the last, and not this government, even the previous government, have ignored what has been going on for quite some time. And we needed to look at this issue more seriously than what we have looked at.
Take you up on that. So basically what you're saying is that it's wrong to look at it essentially as a production problem, or talk about doubling farmers' income, etc. That basically people in rural India are not interested or not enthusiastic about staying on land anymore. They are looking for jobs outside agriculture, and or are looking to migrate to the cities for what think there is a better way of life. Now, why do you see, how and why did this happen? It's essentially a social phenomenon. Or was it linked in some ways to an economic phenomenon?
Well, honestly, it is linked to the problem and the economic problem in the sense, but it is a social problem. So let me break it into two parts. One is obviously, this is something that people have been talking for the last 20 years, that there are too many people in agriculture, we have to get people from agriculture into non-agriculture sector. But that's something which has been happening. Since 2004, people are voluntarily moving out of agriculture. Some out of distress, some voluntarily moving out. Why they're moving out, we'll come back to that. But one thing which they don't realize, and that is what most governments don't realize, and look at their papers and policy, that people are not Lego toys, that you pick it from one place and then put it in the non-farm economy. That's not what you do. If there are too many people in agriculture, it just doesn't mean that you forcibly transfer them to the second part of the economy. It has to be a process by which the agricultural economy creates more non-agricultural jobs. And the key to that is investing more in agriculture. So if you want more people out of agriculture, the solution might look very weird, but the solution is invest more in agriculture. And that's what governments don't do. So they have this skill industry or skill making business or more industry or all sorts of things going on. At the same time, they keep on ignoring agriculture. But that's not how you're going to solve the problem of too many people in agriculture. But the social problem is important, and that's glad you asked about it. And let me give you an anecdote, small anecdote. When I was touring France and talking about the rural communities, and this was a small village in some 200 kilometers from Paris. So we were looking at the condition of farmers. What is the condition of farmers in France? So this was a village where there were now 7 households left in that particular village. The household that was there, that household had 200 hectares, not acres, 200 hectares of, that's the average now. 90 to 100 hectares is almost like average in most of the European. So there was a husband-wife family, both around 55, 60 age group. And I was talking to them and I said that you must be very happy. The state looks after you, you have 200 hectares of land, there's so much subsidy you get. And the woman started crying. The government official was there in front of me. He said that don't ever ask anybody to become a farmer. I said, why? What happened? So much of land is like a luxury. He said that last 7 years I have not moved out of my house. They were doing livestock cultivation, so they had 200 cows also on the plot. And they said that not for a single day I can move out. I still get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, what happened to your children? He said, my children have left me, they have gone to Paris. I said, why? And she said that my son said that he can't get married if he stays in the village because no girl will marry to take care of the farm. There is no club, there is no school, it's a difficult thing, it's a social phenomena. And even today, if you are a Sarkari peon, your dowry rates are 20 times higher than a farmer if you have say 10 acres of plot in North India. That's the reality. So nobody wants to become a farmer. It's a difficult life, the uncertainties are too much, and honestly, even after PhD, people prefer being a government peon than becoming a farmer. So those things need to be, but this is a process churning that every country goes through. The only problem is most of them manage it, we never even think about it.
Track, and this is on the production area about the environmental degradation that's happening in rural India. We occasionally talk about it, but not enough seems to be done about it, whether it's about soil degradation or water depletion or the use of the impact of the use of excessive fertilizers, pesticides. Now, at one level, there is a problem here that if you want to increase incomes, and I don't know if there is enough knowledge available to do so with organic fertilizers, organic pesticides. On the other hand, if you keep pumping in more and more fertilizers, pesticides, and using a technology which needs more and more water, then you are degrading the environment. Now, what are people thinking about it? What are they doing about it? We know there are small experiments here and there, but is there a silent crisis brewing in rural India, which is not only going to affect the quality of life of people, but also the prospects of future production?
I think on both there is a recognition, and most of you will be surprised to know, but the farmers are also worried about the environment, about the climate, about the soil and the water. That's like they say this is, in their local language, they say that this is our livelihood. This is their mother. This is what gives them food and gives them income. So the one myth that people think that farmers are doing it simply because they're not bothered about environment, that's not true. It's like they say that just like and to give an example, they said that जैसे एक driver अपने गाड़ी का ख्याल रखता है, in the local language that's what they say, that you take care of your business. For us, the soil, the water is almost like a key ingredient. We can't ignore it. That's something which the point is also this. The second point that comes to is, never ever think of the farmer as somebody who is doing a charity or the so-called Annadata image in that sense. He is after all earning a livelihood. He is also a businessman and he is there to make business, make profit out of the venture. And that is where the contradiction lies. He has to feed his family. He has to produce as much as possible from the given amount of land that is there. They are trying to find ways which leads to lesser environmental stress, lesser amount of depletion of the natural resources. The problem is that there is not much solution that is available to them. There is nothing which has been offered to them. There is nothing which is there. And that is a very, very difficult choice for a farmer who is having, say, for example, 1 acre of land. The choice between livelihood and maintaining the environmental balance. But not to say that they are not bothered about it and they are not doing it, and they are voluntarily in many, many places doing it. But the problem is huge and humongous problem, cannot be done by the farmers alone. It does require support from the state, support from other sections of the society. Only then we can deal it as a problem of the social society as such, not as an individual problem. And this is a problem which is there in urban areas as well, and no single person's problem.
Before you throw the discussion open to the audience, and this is about, until about 20 years ago, we wouldn't talk about only farmers, we would talk about farmers, large farmers, small farmers, and we would talk about laborers. Now the entire discussion seems to be only about farmers. Now, is it because plots have become so small that there are these farmers who also work as laborers, or is it that we have just forgotten these laborers and there is some tension? Like, for example, in your travels you must have heard often farmers talk about Enriga, speak against Enriga, saying that it's made it difficult for them. Now, why is it? Have we forgotten about laborers, or is it that the farmers of themselves become laborers in part of the time?
Well, most of the time it is the farmers who have become laborers. So the kind of class distinction that used to be there, that class distinction over last 60, 70 years, I mean, at least in North India, you'll not find the so-called image of a large landlord who controls the village with so much of. In the last 30 years, there's also the second phenomena which has happened, that the people who are rich, people who are middle class, or people who are had the so-called medium farmers, they have moved out of agriculture much faster than the poorer ones. And the landless laborers have now, and this is happening almost everywhere, first time they have been allowed to own land or kind of lease in land. So you'll find a lot of these backward caste or, for example, scheduled caste, for the first time in the last 30 years have managed to hold on to land. In many cases, it was also the case that they were socially not allowed to own land. They have been given the chance, not because suddenly the powerful person in the village has decided that suddenly we should change the social structure and we should give them it's just because they have moved out, and they have moved out very fast. Agriculture is not giving them the same kind of return that they would go. That is a crisis also in the Patel and the those who have not invested in the new economy, not invested in education, not taken advantage of the non-agricultural sector, are the ones who are stuck in the rural economy. But the three generations after the independence, land sizes have gone down. The productivity is no longer sufficient for you to survive. So there is a problem, and that is where now this class distinction has narrowed down. Not to say that they are not there, they are there. Those caste issues are also very, very prominent. But yes, the nature of that has changed. There is a greater caste solidarity at the lower level of the social ladder, and there is also some kind of a homogenization as far as the class of agricultural workers, or for example the farmers and the agricultural laborers are concerned.
There's more to discuss, but maybe we can throw the floor open to about 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes questions. We'll take questions. I'd only request one thing. Please be brief in your questions. Don't make comments. Don't speak for 2-3 minutes, because we have only 10 minutes. And then maybe you can take 2-3 questions, and then Himanshu, you can answer, and then we can come back.
Hello. Hello. My name is Narendra. I just wanted, recently I was in Saurashtra 3 months ago. There I was touring in the agriculture sector, where the farmers were staying at that farms itself. One phenomenon they were asking is the rate that they cannot fix it. Is there any, that the government or MSP price is there? Is there any way out for that farmers can fix their price? The other thing, as you said, the second or third generation, the new generation are coming into the farming there. But what they were saying is that they were not able to get the brides for them to marry. I was asking some parents, your son is coming to the farming, but why you are not giving your daughter to the farmer? But they could not give a better answer. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah. Can I ask my question? Yeah. Himanshu, this is Sanjay. I have a twofold question. One is, what do you think is the structural solution as we move forward, right? Is cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, contract farming, what is the path forward in the current situation? That's one. Two, I deal a lot with startups in what I do right now, and I see a lot of interest in rural entrepreneurship. So is that something which can feed into, question number one and the solution? Just wanted your views on that. Thank you.
No. Hello. Agriculture, unlike industry, depends a lot on things which are not under its control. So when you're like weather, like the monsoon, and when you're talking about handing down agricultural knowledge to the next generation, and when that generation doesn't want to remain agriculturists, what are we doing about the knowledge? How will that agricultural knowledge survive if it is to continue? It's a hand-me-down from a parent to a child. It's not something that can easily be taught and learned, because they have to teach about weather, about land, soil and weather and all those things. Thank you.
Yeah. So very quick answers to some of these questions. What you said about Saurashtra is true. I mean, that's something which is happening. But I don't know if the solution is that the farmers should get the ability to fix prices. I mean, farmers are not the ones who can actually fix the price for the society where there are millions of producers and millions of consumers. I can fix my price, and I can say that I will not sell my price, and that they do, that every farmer does. But when you're looking at this price which is for the entire country or entire state, for entire district, that is not possible. That can only be done by the state. But even that I would not suggest that the state should be basically fixing. There are different ways of supporting agriculture, and price fixing is not the only way of, or loan waiver is not the only way you do that. That's basically taking care of the symptom, not taking care of the problem. Because if you keep getting into that business, you will never get out of that business. Forever you'll be doing this. That's what we're doing in loan waivers. The problem is structural, and that's where I think the entrepreneurship in agriculture comes out very clearly. Farmers are very entrepreneurial. They are have been entrepreneurial for quite some time. Lots of innovations have come in. I mean, the biggest innovation is the green revolution. That was done by a mass of illiterate farmers without any access to technology, and they converted the entire food economy of this country from being almost 30 to 40% being dependent on imports to self-reliant and exporting. So I think their ability to innovate and ability to take care of new technology, get into that is phenomenal, because they are in the business of it. The problem is basically because the structure of agriculture has changed over a period of time. And that has changed because of pressures that are coming from demand side, where consumer preferences have changed. Also because of international, we are now open to international trade. So we are now much more vulnerable to price pressures, the transmission of international prices to domestic prices, that we were not, say, 30 years back or 40 years back. I'll give you just 3 examples of what is the change in the structure of agriculture in that sense. First is that in the last 5 years now, we are now producing in volume terms more horticultural products than food grains and other products. Now that's a big change, and all of that is happening at a very small scale, without any subsidy, without any MSP, without any technology, without any government support in that sense. Entire revolution has happened because of farmers producing different things. The second is again the whole wave of mechanization that has gone into the farming sector, where again not much support from the private sector or the support from the government sector. They have managed to completely transform. And related to that is that has released labor. That has released labor from agriculture, which now needs to be absorbed into the non-agricultural sector. But that is a problem that they cannot solve. And that is a structural problem, which is where the government has failed to basically take into account the structural problem. But I think the changing structure of agriculture is a process that will continue. You cannot accelerate it by, you can only be a catalyst at some level, try and manage it. But it is a process that has been going on. So they are not a stagnant society that we are talking about. Question that needs to be asked is not what farmers are doing. The question that needs to be asked is what we as a society are doing, what this state as a responsible body is doing to the farmers. Just to give you one example of it, today our farmers, by all indicators, are the least protected in terms of subsidy. Their subsidy cover that they used to get, that has declined quite dramatically. And think of it in the context of the fact that the poorest of the country, from Angola to Ethiopia to anywhere you look at it, nowhere in the world is agriculture done without state support, directly or indirectly. The rule is, the richer you are, the more support you give. But even the poorest are giving support to the agricultural sector. India is actually going in the other direction, where we are reducing the aggregate measure of support to the agricultural sector. Oh, that's, sorry. But that's something which is, we have not yet reached a situation where agriculture, people who are doing farming are a small minority of the population. We are not in European situation or in the American situation where people who are engaged in agriculture are 2%, 3%. Fortunately, even 50% of your population, that is roughly around 650 million people, are currently in agriculture. So there is, even if it goes down to 300 million, there will be still enough number of people who will be handing it down. So we are talking about a large, so that transmission will continue. So we are not in a situation where it is disappearing.
Since you had a question.
Yeah, that agriculture is not profitable is a no-brainer. I mean, there's no point in just discussing that. Many people have talked about it. But there is some kind of a solution to this, wherein there was this Swaminathan Commission, MS Swaminathan Commission, and he has covered pretty much everything that people have raised now. The loan waivers, MSP, what have you. But people like Mr. P. Sainath, the journalist, they are crying themselves hoarse, asking the government to talk about this commission, debate it in parliament, give it just 1 week. It has never happened so far. Will it help to put more pressure on the government to do something about this?
We'll take some more.
Yeah. Sorry, maybe.
Aniti Anand, can you throw some light on the regional it's such a vast, diverse country, it's not a really big, homogeneous rural scenario. So can you throw some light on the regional variations in terms of this process of moving out? What are the differences you see in terms of how industrialized a state or a region is, and that impact it has on the transformation in the rural sector?
Yeah.
You talked about farmers becoming laborers. That is a very frequent phenomenon in Telangana here. People who are from drought-prone districts of Nagar or Karimnagar, few months they are in Hyderabad. Why? This drought, and that is how they become laborers here. Again, they go back and then they are again agriculturists. Second thing is, aren't farmers leading to environmental degradation? They have two sets of rules. They use chemicals, and the produce which is they get it, that is sold to the others, and for themselves they have organic food. Is it right?
Yeah, so
if you
let's
can
just
briefly,
pick. Yeah, the second question I will not touch because that's a big question, the regional diversity and the industrialization. So that is I will not touch. The first one is something which is a myth. Don't think that farmers themselves eat organic and give you chemicals. They eat the same thing that you produce, and so it's not something which is. And as far as environmental burden of it, we in urban areas have more contribution to environmental degradation than the farmers are. So that's again a myth. Let's get out of that thing. On the policy issue, again, I think there is a problem with the way we are approaching the whole issue. The real problem is, for example, this government, the whole idea of insurance, in a sense, that's a very not the solution actually. It's like I create potholes road for you, and then before you start your journey, I give you an insurance certificate. You're bad luck. You pay for the premium. If you fall into some accident, you get an insurance. But that basically means that I have no responsibility of taking care of it. That's not the solution that works in the agricultural sector. Second problem is why state is important is because we are talking about 600, 700 people who are engaged in agriculture. There we need an agency to coordinate decisions. They are not one producer. We are not dealing with one Apple or we are not dealing with one Samsung where regulation works. We are talking about millions of people of different backgrounds where the state's role is not just to provide support, but also to provide some kind of a regulation in terms of market, in terms of loans, in terms of credit, in terms of technology, diffusion of technology. That is something which nobody else can do, but the state can do. And that is why that role is something which is important. Unfortunately, neither the state governments are doing it, nor the central government are doing. So the political economy question on the policy, not the brass, not the nitty-gritties of which policy works, which policy doesn't work.
Himanshu, this is a huge area. There's a lot more to discuss, but I think we have covered some important areas. So I think after the session, those of you who would like to talk to Himanshu, I think there's some facility where we can meet here, outside. Yeah. Okay, thank you again, and thank you for coming to Hyderabad for this. Yeah.
Thanks, Ram. Thanks, Ajay and Vikram, for inviting me to share my thoughts at this forum.